Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Bridging Impact Podcast, the podcast that is passing wisdom to the next generation of athletes, coaches, and parents to transform leaders on and off the court. In our episode today, we have the privilege of interviewing Paydyn Linton. Paydyn is a CrossCourt manager and also has experience as a social worker and personal trainer, podcaster as well. In our conversation today, we talk about the importance of basketball to him, but most importantly, the team aspect of basketball and the relationships that come with the game of basketball. So, without further ado, let's dive in. Hello and welcome to the Bridging Impact Podcast. Paydyn, I'm really excited to have our conversation today, and you are the second person from the CrossCourt team as you are repping their hat today on the show. So I'm excited to have our conversation, just talk about basketball, and but obviously more than basketball, just about the game and how it can really help people on and off the court, with connections. And so, welcome to the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate you having me, bro.
Of course. So, let's dive right in. I'd like to kind of go back and talk about kind of the story of basketball and sports. And we have other people on who aren't just basketball, but obviously sports have had, a big impact in a lot of our guests' lives. So I'd love for you to share, what was, the journey and the experience of basketball like in your childhood and any other, aspects of your story that are important to you.
Sure. Man, I guess to dive right into it, going all the way back, I grew up in a town called Ventura. It's about an hour north of LA along the PCH beach town. I grew up there. I grew up at my grandparents' house. My parents had me in high school. My mother wasn't around as much when I was younger. Um, so I had an interesting uh, parental dynamic. And how basketball comes into it for me was, first off, I played all the youth sports growing up, so that structure and organization was huge. But at my grandparents' house, I had a basketball hoop outside on the street, and I would spend countless hours outside by myself. I was the only child, shooting around. You know what I mean? Like your typical like 5, 3, 4,
Yeah,
3, 2 in your head. Like shooting the game winners. Just really like finding like peace out there in those moments from like all the stuff I had going on in my personal life or in my childhood. And I think that's where my love of basketball really like was born and created. Um, and then throughout every stage of life, I think sports in general, track, cross country, and basketball gave me structure and goals to work towards that I think really kind of was the opposite of what I was getting in my personal life in some ways, which was a lot more unpredictable and maybe sometimes not so positive. So, um, I think youth sports and basketball particularly saved my life at an early age, if I'm being completely honest.
absolutely. Yeah, no, there's something about the structure of sports and, just the ability to have those connections, right, with coaches and
Right.
your teammates, and really just that place of, I can picture in my backyard as well, doing the same things, 3, 2, 1, creating my own teams, like being
Right.
the guy, and
Yeah.
all of the fun things that comes with kind of youth and exploring, just life and having those fun memories. And I'd love to kind of dive in. You talked a little bit about the structure and just like being an opportunity, a place for you to kind of escape. I'm curious, what kind of like role models and whether it could have been, your grandma, your grandparents, or,
Sure.
coaches did you have, growing up that really made an impact on you?
Yeah, I definitely had like several role models. The first one that comes to mind is my grandmother. She was essentially my mother when my my mom couldn't be around as much anymore. My grandma really took on that role as provider, financially and emotionally. And she was a speech pathologist at high school. She worked with um, kids on the spectrum and also kids that were struggling, like were either in transition from other schools or, were in resource classes. And she was huge on education. And that I think was like a big thing for me as far as like instilling values in my, my moral compass. And then eventually what led me to social work and the career path that I chose. So she's definitely the first one that comes to mind My father as well. My father had a rough start to parenting, but now is one of my best friends and biggest role models. Like, super smart individual, extremely well read, very well accomplished now. And I think it was important for me to like see that growth happen at the age I was at versus it happening when either before I was born or when I was too young to remember. I feel like watching him grow and really change his life has been like an awesome example for me to really understand work ethic and um, how to carry yourself throughout life. And then to bring it back to basketball, Kobe Bryant from afar was always like just a huge inspiration to me. I was obsessed with him as a kid. Like out when I was outside counting down, I was imagining
Yep.
that was him.
Yep.
Um, I had all the posters, all the jerseys, and I think that was really important. For me at a young age to see somebody of that stature and have those kinds of dreams, right? Like I think every kid has some dream in their head that's astronomical, and for a lot of kids, I know it's like the NBA, right? And I think like he kind of gave me that that frame of mind and that thinking, so that's really important. So those are some of the big role models I had early in life.
No, I love that. I think I'd love to touch on the important points of you talked about your grandma's influence on you in wanting to pursue social work, especially as an athlete. A lot of times, there are these narratives around athletes that a lot of them, kind of go into business because, when you're an
Right.
athlete, you're good at competition and working on teams. And, that's what it takes to be successful in a business environment. But I like that,
Yeah.
kind of your life path is taking you a different way in touching on, kind of maybe something that connects a little bit more to your childhood, but also just the compassionate side of sports and like the empathy and the real like actual connection that I feel like is really important to social
Mhm.
work. So I'd love for you to kind of, elaborate more on how your experience with basketball and just your other experiences have influenced you to want to pursue, a career path in social work.
Yeah, 100%. I think you touched on it already. Like, um, some of these skills that we get from various experiences in our life, they translate, right. And I think for sports, you mentioned a lot of athletes get into business because there is that level of competition, right? Like athletes are competitors and they want to continue to excel and progress, and these are good traits that translate over to business. I think for me, and what I needed early in life, the skills that I was taking was the compassion that you mentioned and the teamwork, learning to work with people and be able to communicate, have good language skills. These are things that translate well to helping fields, to social services, to social work, teaching, things on that side of the spectrum. And I think that for me is where it's really translated. I was a person. I still am a personal trainer, but I was full time personal trainer for a little while after I had already done 4 years in social work, and I saw, how those skills translated directly. Right, it's those people skills, that ability to empower somebody to change their life. Right, whether it's to get in the gym more often or right to make other life changes that can improve the quality of their life and their well being, and those are skills I think that really, cross over really well. And so I think that's something that, um, anybody that is in sports or involved in team environments is something that they can pull from.
Absolutely. And so, can you talk about, and this is a conversation we had a little bit off the record earlier this weekend, on just
Sure.
wearing the multiple hats, right? Like you talked about, like social work is something that's important to you, basketball is important to you, personal training, fitness, entrepreneurship, you had a podcast. And so, these are all different kind of hats and layers. And kind of what I was hearing from you is, you learned a little bit, and maybe I'm speaking from my experience too, is like learning that work ethic and from our dads, and then also learning that that compassion from your grandmother, or my mom. And so, can you talk about what it's like to really just wear those really different hats, and that each part of them are still important to you, and the values that you want to impact on life?
Yeah, 100%. I think when I first hear you say all that, I'm like, damn, I need to figure out what I'd do with my life. But
Yeah, I
no,
feel
like
that one
I
too.
think you know, I mean that in a good way because I think we're at the age, you're in your 20s as well.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So late 20s, almost 30. But this is the time where you are supposed to be figuring it out. And, um, you know, I do appreciate that I've tried a lot of different things because I feel like I picked up a lot of skills and experiences and life lessons from, like you said, wearing all those different hats. I was an athlete. And then once that dream was over, you know, I needed to figure out what was next. And I actually was taking social work 101 as an elective or like a prerequisite. It wasn't my major at the time, it was psychology. And funny enough, I actually failed the class. I failed social work 101. I had to drop it. I forget how it works. You drop it before a certain time and you don't get it as like a failed grade. But I was gonna fail the class, and I think like a few classes before I knew that I was gonna drop it, they got into geriatric social work, working with the elderly. And at the time, my grandfather, who I grew up with, he was in the later stages, in the end stages of dementia. And this is something since I was a young kid, since I lived with him, he was dealing with. So I knew what it was to be a caregiver, myself in a small capacity, but my grandmother in a huge capacity. She did everything for him. And I think when I saw that, I had an affinity. There was a a personal connection, and I ended up going back into social work or changing my major, and I got and not to brag, but just to show the dichotomy of when I failed the class, I got an A in every social work class after that, and I was never like a student that got straight A's. Like I got good grades, you know, A's and B's, sometimes a C, but I think I say that getting all A's because it was the first time that I wanted to be learning and I wanted to be at school. You know, I never liked school. I got good grades because my grandma would be,
yeah, yeah.
livid at me if I didn't. You know, I would get things taken away. You know, I'll get grounded, whatever. And so this was the first time that I felt really passionate about learning something, and that was really important. So, anyways, long story short, get my social work degree. I moved to Portland and started working as a case manager at a nonprofit called New Avenues for Youth. So I worked with homeless youth ages 18 to 24, half my time in a transitional housing facility, and the other half of the time in a drop-in center for youth that needed more like crisis intervention. So kids that were living on the street directly. Um, and like such a powerful experience, such a powerful 4 years for me. I feel like it really changed me. All those experiences really shaped, you know, who I am now and where I'm going. And then midway through that, the burnout started to happen. I think a lot of people in social service can speak to burnout. And this was happening with me. I knew that I really loved the job. It was rewarding, but was I going to do this the rest of my life? Could I keep this up? I felt like the answer was no. Um, Ended up getting into personal training with my background in sports. Really enjoyed it. Ended up transitioning to that full time, doing social work part time, and then COVID hit. When COVID hit, went private with my business, started a podcast, started training clients privately, and then that led me eventually to CrossCourt, and now working at a basketball gym. So a lot of different things happened over the course of the last few years, but ironically enough, I feel like I'm in the perfect place to try to use all the skills that I have, right? My skills in social service, whether it's like the event that we were a part of this past weekend and working with organizations like Peace Players, training, right? Being in fitness, being in a gym, basketball, being around the game that I love. So I feel like I'm fitting in somewhere in the middle of that Venn diagram finally. It's not, it's not completely clear what my career is going to look like, but I feel like I'm on the right track. So, anyways, I know that's a word dump right there, but I think, that's how wearing all those different hats, like you mentioned, have kind of landed me where I am now, and how that's kind of shaping my skill set as like a professional.
Absolutely. And I'd love to pick up, kind of where we just left off right there. But before that, I just kind of want to, mention that it's just really important for us to recognize that us as people we're not one faceted. We're not just, for me, I'm not just a basketball coach, right? Like we have this,
Absolutely.
innate desire to want to give back and connect with others. And, for you, it was obviously social work was that really important part that connected for you, that helped you
Yeah.
get those good grades, because I have a similar experience where I was, I got good grades, A's and B's, the occasional C, right? Just to get good
Right.
grades, but not to have like that true connection and genuine want to learn. But then
Right.
like, with through avenues of life, right? Like sometimes we get burnt out, and, that leads us to our next venture, and it's the
Right.
entrepreneurship. And now we're here at CrossCourt, and I'd love for you to share, what you do at CrossCourt. It's a startup brand, and it's something that, I've enjoyed being a part of. I'm almost coming up on a year, being a member there. And, I just
Okay.
love to share the experience you are having there now, and what's the mission.
Yeah, absolutely. So, to take it back to when I started at CrossCourt, I was training privately, like I had mentioned, here in LA, and um, one of my high school basketball teammates, we also played AAU together. He was the first manager at CrossCourt, Renee, and he had been posting CrossCourt on his story. I thought at first he was just playing there, but he was posting it pretty often. And I hit him up. I was like, "Yo, what is this place? Like, I'm trying to come hoop. Like I was playing
Yeah.
at LA Fitness quite often then." And he told me like, "Oh, this is CrossCourt. I'm actually like their first employee, and we're gonna need another manager. Um, what do you think about working here?" I was like, "Shoot, like it sounds awesome. Like, let me come down, check it out." Went down there to play in a session, and the following week I was working there. And it's been almost a year and a few months now that I've been there. It was February and March of 2022, so just over a year. Um, my role there is team captain. Essentially, I'm the in club manager. So, day to day operations and communication with Renee, who is like our back end club manager, and then the owners themselves to just coordinate supplies that we need, scheduling, and then like the in club operations. So, the experience that each member is having there at the club. Yeah, making sure the club is well taken care of, setting up in club partnerships, kind of like how we ended up bringing Peace players on. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a membership based club. I'm not sure if you and Colin went over what CrossCourt is on his episode.
No, no, we didn't.
No, no. So I mean, it's membership based club. People who sign up, they pay a monthly rate, and they have, based on their tier of membership, a different level of access to our basketball social club. And yeah, so how that relates to everything we're talking about, I think the relationships that I built there, including the one that me and you have, is how those relationships can elevate each other, right? And so me and you meeting at CrossCourt, I end up mentioning, that I used to be in social work. You work with peace players. We kind of start talking more about that organization, and then next thing you know, we're putting on an event at CrossCourt. To me, that's what it's all about, right there.
That's exactly where I was hoping on going and touching on, is those connections, right? That happen. And that's just like kind of natural through sports. And I know that, obviously CrossCourt wants to do it and facilitate it through the game of basketball, which is a beautiful thing,
Right.
because it's just so important to so many people, especially, like most of us don't get an opportunity to play college basketball. And for those select few that do get to play college basketball, most of them don't end up playing professional basketball. And, we all still want to keep hooping, and there's LA
Right.
Fitness and whatnot, but it's like it's not necessarily a curated experience to have those connections. And we did have that a really cool opportunity. And I know, like, I'm very grateful to be a part of the Peace Players community. Both Nat and Evan have both been on the podcast before. They're actually probably one of the top first 15 people I ever interviewed. And I actually have learned, a ton about coaching from Nat, especially, and also Evan as well. But Nat's like, if there was like a perfect coach, like someone who was just able to work the room, make people feel comfortable, but also challenge them in a way that's like, you know, I don't want to say proper is not the right word, but just challenge them in ways that help them actually grow. It would be her. And so I've learned a ton from them, and those are different connections. And then, so I'm super grateful to be able to, connect obviously CrossCourt and Peace Players. So can you talk a little bit about the event and, how some of these relationships that are forming at CrossCourt and honestly just in general, really can help elevate, people's lives, and we can bridge that impact to the next generation of girl hoopers and really all hoopers as well.
100%. Yeah. First off, shout out Nat, super dope individual. Yeah, but from what I've seen, also just a really great coach because she's a really good person. Super stoked to have met her. I already feel like I've learned a bunch from her. Um, like you said, basketball is a vehicle, right? It's a connector, and that to me is what CrossCourt is all about. It's like you said, like we're not gonna, be in the NBA. We're not gonna play professionally. We're no longer. Basketball is no longer our profession, but it is a vehicle and it is a connector to elevate ourselves personally and professionally, right? So at CrossCourt, it's all about making those connections to elevate your life personally and professionally. And I think, that's exactly what happened with Peace Players and with CrossCourt, right? We were able to create a relationship, me and you, which forms the connection between Peace Players and CrossCourt. And we set up an event that allows, I think it was 30 young girls to come and get a free basketball clinic that has immense value in their lives, right? They can learn so much from these types of clinics. So, to speak on the actual event, I think from the Peace Players standpoint, you would probably be the one to do so. But this past Saturday, CrossCourt hosted Peace Players to do one of their, would it be a girls' summit?
Yeah, it was Girls Summit. Yeah.
Yeah, girls' summit event to celebrate Women's History Month. There was, I think, almost 30, if not 30, young girls from 4 of their partner locations in Watts and Crenshaw, is what Evan had mentioned. And we did basketball drills, scrimmages. There was a mindfulness and yoga and breathing activity, a women's empowerment workshop, and then other like group activities and introductions and things of that nature. And then at the end, they gave away a bunch of dope gear and other like stuff that the young girls might need. So all around, like such a like awesome, like empowering event. I'm just so glad I got to be a part of it.
Yeah, I think the event part of it is one of the best parts because, for so long, during the pandemic, weren't able to connect. And I feel like these events that we're able to connect and bring so many different, walks of life, right? And like be able to help these girls, connect with different girls from different programs that Peace Players has. And like Peace Players is a great brand, and they can, I'm probably not the best person to touch on it, but they're in 9 different countries, I believe, and have, multiple cities that they're in the United States, and they take people across the United States to Israel for the friendship games, and they're just able to connect people. And I think, if there's a theme kind of running through this, this podcast, it's about connection. It's about the relationships that we build with people. And that's honestly a reflection I was having earlier today, is just, everything in life happens because of people. And I think that's one of the things I've learned as a young professional is, originally I had thought, it's always about putting your head down and working, but a lot of times it's really about nurturing and building relationships and really fostering connections. And so can you touch on, for you, like what has, building and maintaining connections looked like for you, throughout your profession and in your personal life as well?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think about all the major like changes and opportunities in my life manifested from connections, right? Like I felt like it was always somebody that I knew, you know, how I got that internship in college, how I got that next job, right? How I got the job at CrossCourt was because of a relationship I had built
Right.
in high school basketball, right? That's how I have the way I'm currently paying my rent is because of a relationship I made in youth sports. And I think that's a theme throughout my life. I think being an only child, like I always wanted to be around my guy friends. I always wanted to be um, having a sleepover or going to play basketball or playing, video games with my friend or, I was always trying to do the next thing to be around people, to be around my friends. And I think that, mixed with the other values instilled in me by my parents, by my grandparents, are what really have shaped what the ideal everyday life looks like for me as far as a job. And I think that's just what gives me fulfillment. And it's why I've enjoyed working at CrossCourt so much because I'm constantly getting that person to person people connection. Every day is a little different, right? And the relationships I'm building are super unique. I think the mix of business professionals, um, age groups, just different walks of life that are coming in to play basketball, um, are really giving me like such a perspective on life at this point, and that to me is truly valuable. And I know selfishly that moving forward, these relationships are going to benefit me. These people that I'm meeting are going to help elevate my life moving forward. Simple as that. And that doesn't have to be, and that's not just materialistically, right? That's not just like how I'm going to land my next job or how I'm going to find my next apartment or whatever. It's more than that. It's more, what is the direction of my life? How can I continue to connect with people? If me and you never met, I would have never had the opportunity to be at that event on Saturday. And yes, I have a background in social work and I have a background in sporting events because of track and cross country, but I I wouldn't be able to be, gaining that experience and learning from someone like Nat and like Evan and like you firsthand if me and you hadn't struck up that conversation, however many months ago. And so to me, I look at every day at CrossCourt kind of like that kind of opportunity. Like I can meet another person like that.
No, that's a really cool perspective and mindset to have. And that almost leads me to my next question of, sometimes, for those that are listening, maybe like connecting with others may not always come most natural, but, if you don't strike up that conversation, some of these things just don't happen. So I'm just curious,
Right.
kind of what thoughts or, advice do you have around, encouraging and motivating people to, maybe strike up that conversation with someone because you never know about the opportunities and connections that can really lead to the next thing that does benefit your life and benefits others' lives as well, right? Like creating those win-win, scenarios and opportunities.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I think first off, everybody has something to bring to the table. I think when it's hard to do, and I'm still learning how to do it, but when you can be yourself and truly just, as cliche as it might sound, just let your light shine, I think you can always positively affect somebody else. And a big example of that for me was when I was working at New Avenues for Youth in Portland. I was working with youth that were coming from really tough situations, right? And really, were really dealt tough hands in life. And they were some of the happiest people I ever met. And I think, they had obviously such a unique perspective, but because they were so grateful for what they did have, they were actually truly so happy, right? And I think that's something that we can take into our relationships. Like sometimes we look at what we don't have, but I think if we can focus on what we do bring to the table as an individual, right? Like I'm a kind person. Like I care about people. Um, you know, I I'm funny. I can make people laugh. Like these kinds of things are really positive things, and they can nurture a relationship and help it flourish. And just finding something in common with somebody like cross court, pretty easy, right? We're sitting there, we're about to go play basketball. So basketball, again, is that vehicle, but there's connections everywhere to be made, right? Like everybody has their own things, their own hobbies, their own passions. And um, I guess my advice to anybody that wants to make uh, more connections or deeper connections is to go do something you enjoy doing and meet people that also enjoy doing that. And then just be yourself, and the right people are going to attract to you for sure.
That's a good point. Yeah, just finding the what like lights you up, and then just being honest and vulnerable about sharing what's going on. And so just that gratitude, I think, is a really important piece too. And that's something that a lot of times we look at our day. Oh, I wish my day looked like this. Oh, I wish I had this, right? Instead of like actually being counting 1, 2, 3, like look at everything that I do have and do have the opportunity, and we're here in Los Angeles. We're playing basketball for fun right now. Like, come on,
Right.
it's pretty sweet. So,
Yeah, yeah.
and as we kind of enter, kind of the fourth quarter, tail end of our conversation, I'd love to kind of, shift gears towards like, what is, kind of like looking ahead, looking forward, looking ahead on what do you think you're going to be bridging impact next to? Because obviously a lot of it's connections and facilitating, and we've kind of talked about that career arc and journey, and obviously we're still growing. So I'd love for you to talk about what other things you have are you excited about right now, and other ways that you plan on making an impact, whether it's at CrossCourt or elsewhere.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I think this past Saturday is the start of it for me, in the sense that I really would like to use the platform that I have at CrossCourt and the space that they allow me to use to try to continue to partner with organizations like Peace Players, and continue to put on events or create relationships that affect positive change in other people's lives, and to whatever scale, right? If it's 30 young girls or if it's one individual, I think doing something that can positively affect somebody else's life creates a positive energy that is usually contagious. I think when you have the right intentions, things tend to flourish off of that. So moving forward, I'd like to continue to operate in the middle of this Venn diagram, or in all of these hats that I've worn. I'd like to just continue to use all the skills that I've picked up along the way, and try to figure out how I can use all those skills and manifest something a little bit more tangible, as far as whether it's a project, a position, as far as a job, or even an organization. I'd like to really continue to build on that and just continue to, yeah, do good things, and that affect other people's lives, and then hopefully in turn mine as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love that. Creating relationships for positive changes, definitely resonates with me. And that's it's probably what we'll title this episode. So, as we leave off, where can people, find and connect with you? And do you have any parting words?
Yeah, I mean, if anybody's interested in connecting with me, you can always just go to my Instagram. It's just my first name, Paydyn. Always just hit me up on there. I'm always at CrossCourt. I'm there like 6 days a week. So if you go there like in the afternoon to nighttime, I'm probably going to be in there. To anybody that likes playing basketball, I really urge you to come try it out, because not only can you get a very unique and elevated basketball experience, I think the relationships that you could form by becoming a member at CrossCourt can be ultimately like super beneficial to your life, personally and professionally, if you're looking to network with like really awesome individuals. We have so many cool members. And yeah, thank you to you, Justin, for allowing me to be on here, and continue to develop our conversation surrounding your organization, CrossCourt, Peace Players, and how we can continue to just keep the good vibes rolling, because that's what it's all about.
That's what it's all about. I love it. I mean, this conversation is a clear example of the relationships that are built at CrossCourt. So appreciate your time today, Paydyn. Thank you so much for coming on.
Alrighty, Justin. Appreciate you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Bridging Impact Podcast. We'd love it if you would like, subscribe, leave a comment and a review on whatever platform you're on. It's the best way to help us grow. We appreciate you for doing that. We'll shout you out on social media. I'd also love if you connected with me on social media. Let me know your thoughts, and this is why I do it. I want to share knowledge and wisdom from experienced leaders to people like yourself and myself, so we can have this dialogue and move forward, make an impact on the world. So stay tuned, stay subscribed. Cheers.